Hello, students. Today I will be discussing to you an introduction for Psychology 101N with the subject title of Introduction to Psychology. So, for today's video, I will be discussing to you what psychology is, the different careers or career paths for psychology, the different scientific methods and research designs, and some ethical considerations when conducting research. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so before we'll really start with our discussion, hopefully, as we go along with the different lessons for this semester, you will be able to know and how to evaluate the evidences whenever you will read some research articles or journals, or whenever you hear something that relates to psychology, you'll be able to somehow evaluate, know how to evaluate that if these claims are true or not in the field of psychology, particularly in the field of psychology. Okay, so hopefully when you finish this course and for this entire psych 101 subject, and whenever you will graduate, hopefully, with the course of BS in psychology, you will be better to know and be able to examine evidence and decide which claims to take seriously, because dili man tanan no naman jud uban nga fake news. So you have to know how to research really well if these claims are really true. Okay, psychology is a science. So when we talk about science, we need to have evidences, no, research based. We need to be objective. Dili lang kay unsay uso na. So we need to have really these studies from these different claims that we hear and we see, if these are really true. Okay, so psychology is different because so many people have misconceptions about this field. So I don't know in your case, but for me personally, when I took the course of psychology, when I had my undergraduate, no, college years, when I took psychology, whenever people would ask me, "O yun sa kurso nimo," I would say, okay, I'm taking up psychology. They have this notion nga, uy, psychoha kuno ko bi. They the term of psychoha kuno ko bi, or like can you read my mind, no? So they have these belief that when you're taking up psychology, you can literally read their minds, or masayko kuno nimo sila. So unfortunately, psychology is not like that. So as we as we will go along with our discussion, we will be able to know what psychology really is. Okay, so dili na ing anak. Kay basig ana ang thinking ba, so we need to educate those people that psychology is not like that. You cannot really read their minds. Dili ka maka telekinesis or whatever, and dili ka maka psycho. The term psycho. Dili ka maka psycho nila. Okay? So, what is psychology? So, the term psychology derives from the Greek roots psyche, meaning soul or mind, and logos, meaning word. So, psychology is a study of the mind or soul. This was the definition of psychology in the early 1900s. And later on, beginning in the early 1900s, psychologists defined their field as the study of behavior. So, dili ka maka-read og minds, but psychology merely focuses on studying one's behavior. Okay? Observable behavior. So by definition, psychology is a systematic study, meaning when you talk about systematic, well, of course, it deals with science. So there must be some research-based research processes, no, when we talk about like studying humans' behavior and experience. Um, wala lang siya nag-focus lang no sa observable behavior, but also psychology also tackles with mental processes. So that's why naana ang mga counseling therapies no, the interviews, you need to talk uh with your clients, no, or kinsa manggani ang imo habang responded for your research. You need to talk with them and have or know what are their experiences, kay lahi-lahi man ang ginahuna-huna sa isig usa ka tawo. Okay, aside sa observable behaviors that you will take note of it no, when studying their behavior, you need to also to know their side, their mental processes and their experiences. Okay, so when most people think of psychologists, no, they think of clinical psychologists lang. Clinical psychologists meaning uh, they have this idea nga when you're a psychologist, you're trying to help for those people that are worried or depressed or those troubled people. But take note that psychology is a very broad field of science, a field of study. So later on, we'll be discussing it one by one. Daghan siya. It doesn't just merely focus on this one, clinical psychology nga helping those troubled people, but there are a lot of branches of psychology. Okay, so general points about psychology. So when you will be studying human behavior and experiences, it depends. No, when you're trying to interpret no these behaviors from these people, it depends. It doesn't just solely uh caused by their past experiences, but also you need to take into consideration their genetics, their health, their environment, no, their social life. So daghang aspects. When you try to explain it, dili lang kay usara ka like for example, when you are trying to diagnose someone no that have these mga disruptive behavior. So, for example, dili lang ka makaingon nga the cause of this disruptive behavior of a person uh, was caused by like their traumatic childhood experience. Dili lang kana. There are a lot of factors, and as future professionals in your respective fields, you need to know nga ang what these factors that might have affect the person as of this moment. Okay. And then progress depends on good measurement. So progress in science depends on new techniques, new discoveries, and new ideas, probably in that order. So psychology's understanding has advanced fastest on topics such as sensory processes, learning, and memory. So when you are in a field of psychology, as much as possible, you have to contribute, no, contribute in a sense that you will have more, you have to do research, no, um to add more references to really test if these theories are real. Okay, so as mentioned on this particular portion, no, nga research progress has been slower in such areas as emotion and personality. As I've said a while ago, psychology is really broad. Dako siya nga field. Um, na ay learning, motivation, no? Basta daghan siya later on. We will be discussing it. So, in the aspect of emotion and personality, there are still lesser research in this particular field. So, I suggest as future professionals in the field of psychology, hopefully you will be able to contribute and do research that tackles about emotion and personality. Okay, for a while. Okay. Okay, and last point is confidence in the conclusions should depend on the strength of the evidence. Okay, so it is important to distinguish between opinions based on strong evidence and those based on less. So if your opinions, if you have different opinions based on on the results of the study, pero ang pag-present na sa research is that muna na ang general or like the majority of the population, for example majority or kasagaran ng siya worldwide na siya nga ing ana ang somewhat like um result of that study, even though nga gina gina-copy, and not like copy but like samo ginasundog ang style sa study and on the different parts of the world, and then same lang ang results, and then you have a different opinion with that. I'm so sorry to tell you, your opinions doesn't matter at all. Okay. Again, we have to depend on the strength of the evidence of the research. So if the results of the study is like butag to worldwide na ing ana na siyang effect, then like the results of it, then um what you can just do is you have to push for, if dili jud ka mo agree sa results of this of that particular study, what you ang imorang mabuhat no is that you have to make your own study and prove to the world that that your opinion of that particular like topic no on psychology is like that, and you need to prove and have um at least like a lot of research that would um support your claim. Okay, so that's the third point about psychology. Okay, so there are major philosophical issues in psychology. So these are some three major philosophical issues. So first is free will versus determinism. Okay, so scientists assume that determinism is the idea that everything that happens is a cause or determinant that someone could observe or measure. So they believe na whatever the person is doing, no, or whatever that person's behavior might have a cause of it, probably his or her past experiences, or his genetics perhaps, or his social environment, na adjun na cause in everything that a person is doing. So that's for determinism. For free will, the belief that behavior is caused by a person's independent decisions is known as free will. So they believe that um as of this moment, what you're doing, what your behavior is, it's caused by your own decision, not by your like past experiences, not your genetics, not your health, no, not your environment. You're doing it because you just want to do it. That's for free will. So narana ninyo, because these kaning tulo ka major philosophical issues is has always been a debate for over like forever. Pila na ni ka years nga sige debate. So it's up to you, no, if uh what what particular lang asa mo dapit no nga mas mo agree. Okay, so free will versus determinism, so it's up to you to decide. And then the mind brain problem. Okay, so dualism holds that the mind is separate from the brain but somehow controls the brain, and therefore the rest of the body. So they believe that whatever you're thinking and your brain is a separate entity. Okay? So imagine that. And then the next is, well, nearly all brain researchers and philosophers agree for or favor monism, because believing that conscious experiences, whatever our mental processes whatever our mental processes or whatever we're thinking, no, our consciousness is inseparable from the physical brain. They are one. So that's for the mind brain problem. And then the third one, the third debate is the nature nurture issue. So nature meaning heredity versus nurture environment issue. So kung saan may nakakos ng mga behavior. For example, you see a child nga um very aggressive or violent, no? So what might be the cause of it? Is it because of heredity or is it because of the environment? Okay, so mo na siya, the nature nurture issue. Okay, so what do psychologists do? So service providers to individuals. So it is important to distinguish between several types of mental health professionals. So dili lang kay clinical psychologists, but there's also psychiatrists, social workers, and counseling psychologists. They are the main service providers for people with psychological troubles. Okay. So what is clinical psychology? So for those psychologists or clinical psychologists, no, they have an advanced degree in psychology, particularly in master's degree or doctor of philosophy or doctor of psychology with a specialty in understanding and helping people with psychological problems. So that is their focus. They want to help those people with psychological problems, those have mga troubled people, no, those have mental disorders. Okay, that's the coverage for the clinical psychology. Well, here in the Philippines, when you want to become a clinical psychology, no, first of course you need to graduate BS in psychology, and then you have to take a master's degree. No, master's degree in psychology, there's there are universities here in the Philippines that are offering specialized program in master's degree in psychology, major in clinical psychology. Okay, so they have to take it, uh, finish their course for master's degree, and then once you're done with your master's degree, you have to take the board examination for psychologists, no? So ingana ang process diri sa Pilipinas. You cannot take the board examination unless you have a master's degree in psychology. Okay. Now, for psychiatry, psychiatry is a branch of medicine that deals with emotional disturbances. So, if you want to become a psychiatrist, of course, you have to earn a medical doctor degree and then take an additional 4 years of residency training in psychiatry. So, of course, here again, we have to relate it here in the Philippines. Kaya naman ta sa Pilipinas, no? Of course, if you're here in the Philippines, you have to take first a pre-med course in college. So, I suggest if you want to really pursue in psychiatry, then you have to take at least medical course in college. Well, if you're taking psychology, psychology is a medical course man sad pod. So you can do that, or you can also have nursing or whatever your choice. And then once you're done with your college degree, then you have to finish first um the medical doctor degree, no? And then after which, so mahimo na kang doctor pohon, doctor of medicine ha, dili doctor of philosophy, doctor of medicine. So once you're done with your your medical degree, then you have to take the physician's board examination, and then once you'll be able to pass it, then you have to get a specialized program for psychiatry. And the difference for psychiatrists to psychologists, kay ang psychiatrists are, they can prescribe drugs o like mga medicines, no, such as antidepressants, no. For psychologists, they cannot do that kay dili man sila mga medical doctors. Doctor lagi, per doctor of psychology, or like doctor of philosophy, major in whatever, like as long as like it's in line with psychology, no. So that's the difference between psychiatry and psychologist. Okay, a clinical psychologist. For psychoanalysts, uh, they are therapy providers who rely heavily on the theories and methods pioneered by the early 20th century Viennese physician Sigmund Freud, and later modified by others. So later on, you will be able to know Sigmund Freud. I suggest you start researching who is Sigmund Freud, because that's a big name, no, in the world of psychology. You have to know who is Sigmund Freud. Okay, so Sigmund Freud is one of the pioneer, rather the pioneer for the psychoanalytic theories, no. So later on, you'll be able to know what the theory is all about. Okay, so for psychoanalysts, they're trying to um they're still using, no, the theories of Sigmund Freud, no, the techniques for for therapies, no, during their sessions, using the idea of Sigmund Freud. Kay again, let's go back. Kay if you'll be taking puhon-puhon, no, the theories of personality nga class. Okay, lahi man na siya pod nga kanang subject, no. So puhon, if you'll be taking that class, you'll be able to know nga there are a lot of theories. Okay? Dili lang kay sa kang Sigmund Freud. So, mo na siya nga gina-present nga ang different theories, because once nga you will be able to have your own mga counseling sessions or therapy, no, dili lang mo mag-focus, or it's up to you what theory ang mas pabor sa inyo, ha, ang mas ganahan ninyo. So um that's why it's your choice. You are being presented with this a lot of theories, and it's your choice, no, nga unsa may mas applicable to your future clients, no. Nga mas matabangan sila by using and relying these theories. But for psychoanalysts, they are more focused on the theory of Sigmund Freud and their methods. Okay. And then clinical social worker. A clinical social worker is similar to a clinical psychologist, but with different training. So in most cases, a clinical social worker has a master's degree in social work, specializing in psychological problems. I believe there's also a bachelor's degree here in the Philippines that is majoring in a social work rather. So social work, yes. So um, I guess you can take that, no, and then have a specialized program that's in line for psychology. And then for counseling psychologists, no, a counseling or a clinical psychologist deals with mainly with anxiety, depression, and other emotional distress. That's for clinical psychology. When you talk about counseling psychologists, they deal mostly with life decisions and family or career readjustment. So ang best example here are guidance counselors in schools, no. So they tend to help the students, not just the students but also the employees as well, no, try to help those students nga have difficulty in choosing their career paths, no. So they will try to have some counseling sessions with them to really discover nga unsa may problema, no, or unsa man jud gusto sa estudyante. no, para mas murag mas mas mahiluna siya sa iyang kurso, whatever like that. So more on life decisions and family or career adjustments ang focus on counseling psychologist. And then there's also forensic psychologists. So forensic psychologists provide advice and consultation to police, lawyers, and courts. No, so forensic psychologists are clinical or counseling psychologists with additional legal issues training. Okay. So nice po ni siya. They advise on such decisions as whether a defendant is mentally competent to stand trial or whether someone eligible for parole is dangerous. Okay. You can just search, no, what universities, no, not just here in the Philippines but also from other countries, is offering forensic psychology. Kay murag medyo nihit bitaw po na siya nga kanang specialized program. So if there's a chance on your end, no, nga if you really want to pursue it, and then there's an opportunity, then should grab it. Okay. And then, okay, so service providers organizations. So psychologists also work in businesses, industry and school systems doing work you might not recognize as psychology. Again, bisag asa ibutang ning mga psychology graduates. No, it's not dili lang kay limited siya, no, sa mga clinics, no, sa mga hospitals. Um, but also you can see psychology graduates in businesses, no, in different industries and even in schools, no, bisag asa siya mo na ang nakabiu sa psychology nga course. You can it's very flexible nga kurso, can depende on your strengths, no, and also your preferences. Okay, so the job prospects in these fields have been good, and you might find these fields interesting. Okay, so there's industrial slash organizational psychology. So industrial or organizational, or what we call IO psychology. So this field deals with such issues as hiring the right person for a job, training people for jobs. So basically HR works. Once my HR works, human resource. So most of the people mga HR managers, human resource managers, have at least a background in psychology or psychology graduates, no? Okay, sorry. Psychology grad to be psychology graduates, no, mga human resource managers. Um they because again, when we are still in the college level, we're being trained, no, to deal with different kinds of people. uh, we are um, being learned to know and study human behavior. So if ever you become HR managers in the near future, you'll be able to know na nga who are these people that are fitted for this kind of job, how to motivate these people to really work well, no, how to improve their job performance. Okay, so that's the work for IO psychology. And also, it also includes performance planning, an organizational structure, and organizing the workplace so that workers will be productive and satisfied. So that's the job for IO psychology. And then school psychology. So school psychologists are specialists in the psychological conditions of students, usually from kindergarten through the 12th grade or senior high level. Okay, so school psychologists identify children's educational needs. No, they devise or make a plan to meet those needs, and then either implement the plan themselves or advise teachers how to implement it. And then teaching and research. Okay, so if those graduates are not clinical psychologists, they can teach and also they can conduct research in mostly ni siya in colleges or universities. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm more into teaching um and producing research, no published research. So to some extent, different kinds of these professionals study different topics. So if you really want to pursue research, no, in psychology, if possible, you have to at least like uh a goal, no, of what kind of topic that you really want to focus on. Okay, so these are the different topics that you can choose if you want to pursue research in psychology. So these are the various topics. So first, developmental psychology. So developmental psychology, they study how behavior changes with age from womb to two. Okay, so they study the different behaviors from ano sa ba mga middle childhood, mga adolescents, no, the old age people. So they really want to study their behaviors, their personality, and ana. And then learning and motivation. The research field of learning and motivation studies how behavior depends on the outcomes of past behaviors and current motivations. And also, they also want to know, no, what are some techniques that we can do, no, to increase learning and motivation of a person. And then cognitive psychology focus on how people make decisions, no, how to improve, no, your cognitive skills, know how to solve problems and convert their thoughts into language. And then biological psychology, or a behavioral neuroscientist, no, explains behavior in terms of biological factors such as activities of the nervous system. So they're more into the physiological aspect of a person. So how your brain, no, how your mental activities from your brain affects your behavior. And then how the effects of drugs and hormones, your genetics and evolutionary pressures could affect the person's behavior. Okay, there's also evolutionary psychology. They try to explain behavior in terms of the evolutionary history of the species, including why evolution might have favored the tendency to act in particular ways. And then social psychology study how an individual influences others and how the group influences an individual. So how, like for example, if you're into groups, no, so will your behavior change because that's the majority of what's doing, no, so how the group is influencing your behavior and how also yourself is influencing the group. Okay, that's vice versa. And then cross-cultural psychology compares the behavior of people from different cultures. Okay, lahi-lahi man tang mga tao, no, diri sa kalibutan. So this is very interesting though, no, nga try to compare, no, the different behaviors, practices um from different parts of the world. Even not just if like magsugod lang tano diri sa local level, hopefully puhon-puhon you'll be able to take Filipino psychology. Namata na psikolohiyang Pilipino na ay naatay ing ana nga subject sad. So it's more on a research, no, of Filipino psychology. You'll be able to know the different practices, no, from different communities. Kay lahi-lahi jud. Even in practices, no, from like from Boholanos versus sa mga Cebuanos, mga taga Mindanao, ing ana. So hopefully pohon-pohon ma makaabot ra mo ana. Okay? So should you major in psychology? Well, you're all psych majors here, so hopefully you'll be able to pursue it. Of course, first you have to graduate in psychology, and once you graduate, you have to pursue, no, your profession that's in line in psychology. Okay, sorry for that for a while. Okay, let's continue. Sorry. Okay, so should you major in psychology? So psychology majors took jobs such as personnel work or social services related closely to psychology. So others will take jobs in businesses or in government. Yeah. So whatever the job, psychology courses prepare people to evaluate evidence, organize and write papers, no, handle statistics, listen carefully to what people say and respect cultural differences. So muna yung naka-nice no for psychology students no hopefully no nga kanilang no nga you have an empathy, be able to understand people even though nga you have different opinions with them, so be able to understand why they're acting like that way, no. So that's the edge for psych majors, no. And then flexible lang, no, be able to adapt whatever situation nga ihatag, and also dili lang kay limited mo into writing but also you are exposed to meet a lot of people and be able to learn a lot from them, hear their stories, no, and then learn their culture as well. Okay, so those skills are important for almost anything you might do. That's why psychology, bisag asa mo pwede ibutang. It might be again from different institutions, organizations, businesses, hospitals, school. You can psychology will always be there. Okay, next. Okay, so again, these are some major specializations in psychology. So na-mention na niya a while ago, you can just have further research on different specializations. You can also search po if wala na mention dere, you can also do that. Okay? Kaya napa may daghan. Okay. So let's also talk about what's what was psychology in the past and then versus now. Okay? Okay. I think this is a wrong slide. Okay, so let's start here. Okay, so Wilhelm Wundt and the first psychological laboratory. So it was set up in Leipzig, Germany. So this was the first laboratory exclusively for psychological research. So Wundt's interests were wide-ranging, but one of his goals was to find elements of experience comparable to those of chemistry. So please take note of that, those mga special names, no, the pioneers in the field of psychology. And then there's also William James, no, the one who pioneered functionalism and also the founder of American psychology. So, unsa man yung functionalism? So, he was trying to research, no, or to have a study on how people, no, or how to help people produce mga useful behaviors. So, how you can strengthen the good habits of the person, no, how can someone attend to more than one item at a time, no, the focus and then the attention, and then how do people recognize that they have seen something before and how does an intention lead to action. So those were some of the topics that William James were starting to discover at that time. And also In the late 1800s and early 1900s, psychologists paid little attention to abnormal psychology. So they just leave it to the psychiatrists. So the psychologists were more devoted into studying vision and other sensations. The reason for this is that they wanted to understand the mental experience, and experience consists of sensation. Okay, sensations of the touch, the vision, no, the hearing, and how these connect to our mental experiences. And also Charles Darwin. So dili lang kay sa biology, no, si Charles Darwin, but also he is also um contributing to the field of psychology. Okay. So Darwin argued that humans and other species share a remote common ancestor. So if so, other animals could share features in common with humans, including some degree of intelligence. So at that time, naaning comparative psychologists. So unsa man ni sila, they are the ones, or they are specialists who compare different animal species and did something that seemed more reasonable that it does now. So they set out to measure animal intelligence. So that was their goal at the time nga they're trying to discover nga unsa nga animal ang pinaka bright, imagine that. But later on they discovered that uh, animals have their own strength, no, dili lang kay limited ang pag-measure sa intelligence, no, so laylahig mga strengths ang animals. So they disregarded this idea that ranking the different animals from the most intelligent, no, to the dumbest nga kanang animal. Okay, dili nimo na siya maingon nga siya ang pinaka-bright. Pareho gud sa usa ka tawo, no. If you talk about the intelligence of a person, no, there are multiple intelligences. Dili lang kay IQ, no. Okay, naapoy tawo nga bright og dako pud og EQ. Okay, so later on, we'll also be discussing about the multiple intelligence. So again, pareho ra po na siya sa animals, no, na it doesn't just focus on one set of, or one spectrum of um, measuring intelligence. Okay, so Francis Galton, he's also a cousin of Charles Darwin, no, was among the first to try and measure intelligence sa human, no, to ask whether intellectual variations were based on heredity. I guess up until now, there's still a lot of researchers, no, nga they're trying to prove something, and some research ani is unsa ba kanang pangatuwa daw intelligence kay dako daw makuha from our mothers, but dili pa na siya like 100% proven, no, so that's why there are a lot of studies, no, that are being conducted to prove that claim, no. So or unsa ba 50-50 daw ang heredity sa intelligence, 50-50 from your mother and from your father. So ana na siya, unending research to really know unsa ang tinuod. Okay, and then Alfred Binet was the one to devise the first useful intelligence test. Okay, so um, he was able to make this intelligence test, no, and was able to produce it to test the IQ of a person, based on his made questionnaire or tool. And then John B. Watson, uh, is the founder of behaviorism. Please take note of that. No, so what is behaviorism? Is a field of psychology that concentrates on observable, measurable behaviors and not mental processes. Okay, so as behaviorists view, psychology is a purely objective experimental branch of natural science. So they are not into mental processes, but they just solely focused on observable behavior. So when we talk about observable behavior, kung saan lang makita nila, they will take note of that. They don't need your explanation. They don't need your shared experiences why you did that behavior. They are just like taking down notes, observe, record your observable behavior. That's for behaviorism. Then, inspired by Watson, many researchers set out to study animal behavior, especially animal learning. So, one advantage of studying non human animals is that the researcher can control the animal's diet, waking, sleep, schedule, and so forth far more completely than with humans. And also, aside from that, um, why animals are being used as um the ex- the these animals are being used in the experiment, no, or in the research, is also for ethical reasons. Kay basin di ay nga na ay mga gipangbutang nga mga kanang mga drugs, no, nga being used to the animals to test if that particular drug is effective or not. So lisod man sad nga ana na sa mga humans i-test, no. So we need to take into consideration the ethical, no, if ethical issues with that. Okay. So from Freud to modern clinical psychology. So the Austrian psychiatrist Sigmund Freud, again, revolutionized and popularized psychotherapy with these methods of analyzing patients' dreams and memories. So he tried to trace current behavior to early childhood experiences, including children's sexual fantasies. So that's mga mo focus, no, sa theory of Sigmund Freud. Okay. So during World War II, many soldiers wanted help dealing with the traumas caused by their war experiences. But because psychiatrists could not keep up with the need, psychologists began providing therapy, and clinical psychologists, we now know, it began to develop. So please take note why, or how, rather, how clinical psychology was developed because of that s- um scenario from during World War II nga nagkahurot-hurot na ang mga psychiatrists, so they were trying to pull up this psychologists, these clinical psychologists, to keep up with the demands kay daghan ba yung mga distressed nga mga um soldiers, kay tiaw bagikan ka og kanang gera, no, so ma-distress ka, emotional distress, anxiety, no, stress. So that's why they reach out to these psychologists, no, these people, to help them with their mga counseling, no, mga therapy sessions, no, to help these soldiers. So I just have to flash on your screens the um an important timeline of how, like, the psychology, no, the different timeline, important dates or years na lang, years, no, nga na yung mga kanang unsay nga na ani, na yung mga, like for example here, in 1910, no, Pavlov discovers classical conditioning. So classical conditioning is also part of psychology, okay? But not all are here are kanang part just sa psychology, it's like what was happening during at those times, mga important years, nga na ay na discover uh, on the field of psychology, and also some of its history mansad. Okay. Psychological science. So the word science derives from a Latin word meaning knowledge. Okay, so when we talk about science, no, or when we will be conducting research, of course, first you need to gather evidence. Okay, so science is search for knowledge based on carefully observed and replicable data. So good observations and measurements often suggest a pattern that leads to a hypothesis. So, which is a clear predictive statement, often an attempt to explain the observations. So, of course, as future mga researchers, no, of course, when you will first to conduct your own research, you need to observe what's happening around you. Okay, so imong curiosity ba. Okay, so if and then once naanak kay certain topic that you really want to focus on, then you need to gather evidence on that particular topic to start off with your research. Once you were able to gather some evidence, then you will be able to formulate your hypothesis. So you cannot formulate a hypothesis if you were not able to observe what's happening. Okay? So a hypothesis can also be based on a more general statement. A good hypothesis leads to predictions. Okay, so what is example of like example na to no hypothesis, like you're observing karong mga bata no nga somehow they're ibutang to they're kind of violent, no, violent sila. So what might be the cause of their violent behaviors? So nakita ka karon as of this moment, this generation, um kids are fond of um using cell phones, no, particularly mga mobile games. So probably naka-hypothesis ana nga um the the cause might be the use of mobile games. Okay. Of course, kung magdula sila, butang na to sa may I'm really not familiar no sa mga dula ron. But of course, if magdula kasagaran, naadyo na yung mga violent no nga mga actions like naay mamatay, no, naay patyon, ing ana no. So um that might contribute no the thinking of a child. So mo na ana jud ka mag-start, mag-observe ka una what's happening, and then you will make your own hypothesis. Probably um the cause of these violent behaviors came from playing mobile games, no, mga violent nga mobile games. Okay, and then method. So any hypothesis could be tested in many ways. So how to test your hypothesis? Then you have to have your methods, you have to start no your research. How will you start it? You have to conduct surveys, or you have to conduct interviews, or you have to conduct thorough observations to whoever nga respondents of your particular research. And then once you were able to gather the data, in how man nakag-survey or interview, man nakag-observe, then for that's the time for um, results. So an investigator needs to set clear rules about measurement. So after making the measurements, the investigator determines whether the results are impressive enough to call for an explanation, or whether the apparent trends might have been due to chance. So for your results to be more valid or reliable, no, If you're using like survey or questionnaire method, you have to use standardized tool or questionnaires, no? Dili lang kay nagama ka og questionnaire, then nagama-gama ra ka imuha ra. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to make your own research, no? What are these standardized tools that are also being used to other researchers, no? Nga mo inline sad sa imuhang ginahimo nga research. Okay? If wala kay makita ang standardized tool that would really fit on your research, then you have to make your own. But before you will able to produce it, no, or able to give it to your respondents, then you have to test it first for a pilot testing. So sa may mahitabo ng pilot testing, so mangita pa kag murag siya ba, mangita pa kag another set of respondents to answer your self-made questionnaire, and then after which once nga makita na sa nimo ang result, you have to run for it for a statistician to see if the results have a valid or validity, or the items are valid or reliable, and they set like a scoring or a score for it. So dapat makapasar ka ana nga score. So if dili ka kapasar ana nga score from the statistician, then you are not allowed to give out your self-made questionnaires. Pero if makapasar na, then you can do that. You can give your questionnaires to your respondents. Okay? And then after you were able to gather your results, next is interpretation. So you need to interpret the results. So this is the final task to consider what the results mean. So ang imo bang results is, ibalik na to ang atong example for those kids that are playing mobile games. So you need, based on your data gathered, no, and the results, you have to interpret nga, are playing mobile games, no, do really cause the children's violent behavior. So depende na sa result. So if yes, then have your own conclusion, okay, for your research. Okay, and then replicability. So replicable results are those that anyone can obtain at least approximately by following the same procedure. So it would be good, no, nga someone would also do research that are the same as yours, pero different na sad nga population, or different respondents, to really test nga for example, ang imuhang scope lang ha, on your research is here in Bohol. Okay? So it would be better nga someone also from outside the Bohol, or not a Filipino perhaps, would replicate your study, and see to it if your results align to theirs. So if mo align, then that's good. Kaya mo ra bitaw, same ra data og kanang um results ani. Okay? As long as the procedures also is the same as with your research. Okay? And they are and also need sad na og approval from your end, sad nga they have to replicate your study. Okay, so how to evaluate scientific theories? Okay, so let's define first what a scientific theory is. So a scientific theory is more than a guess. So it is an explanation or model that fits many many observations and makes accurate predictions. So when you say that's a good theory or a well-formed theory, then that means it is falsifiable, meaning that is stated in such clear, precise terms that we can see what evidence would count against it if such evidence existed. So, example, like some researchers mangani diha nga would really try to look for a whole of that theory, and bisag unsaon nila og um have like claim or like an evidence nga kanang dili jud na siya mo fit or dili tama ang theory, and then ang theory is can really defend it itself, then that's falsifiable. Dili siya matandog ba ing ana ang term, so dili siya matandog og bisag unsaon kung tao pa na siya bisag unsaon siya bash, no, or say pangbato niya nga negative, no, dili matandog ang theory, then that means that's a theory is a well-formed theory, and that is falsifiable. Whatever um false claims towards the theory, if if the theory itself can stand on its own, then that is falsifiable. And then next is, instead of insisting that all research is an effort to falsify a theory, another approach is to discuss the burden of proof. So the obligation to present evidence to support one's claim. So this is uh like kanang kuan ni siya, kanang usingan ni siya oy, instead of like falsifying the theory, no, researchers are trying, no, to strengthen more the theory. So a lot more research, a lot more studies, no, that could defend the theory. That's for the burden of proof. And then when given a choice among the explanations that seem to fit the facts, we prefer the one whose assumptions are fewer, simpler, or more consistent with other well-established theories. So this is known as the principle of parsimony. So meaning, or like somehow like a generalized what you can really see, no, more bag like common sense na even though that you cannot, like it's already observable, that it's already there. So that's parsimonious, no, parsimonious na siya ba, no, nga without even trying to read or trying to research, no, in-depth articles or journals regarding that theory, but as like a human being nga makaayong kamurag common sense naman siya, oy ngayong ana mahitabo, then that means that's a really good theory, and that is the principle of parsimony. Okay, so when you conduct psychological research, these are some of the things that you need to remember. So pohon-pohon, no, murag makuan jud mo asa ba, mabugbog jud mo og mga research. Ignan na lang muna ako da ano, so sige ra mo og conduct og research, sige ra mo og propose og research, naa paghapon mo yung thesis, aside sa inyong thesis, um if ma-under mo gihapon ako with other subjects pohon-pohon, hilig gihapon ko propose gihapon mo og research, no, bahalag daghan mo og research. This is for you to practice, no, pohon when you will be having your proposals and oral defense, and hopefully you'll be like great researchers once you will graduate in the University of Bohol. Okay, so edge naman po na siya. So hopefully you'll be able to use it on your future careers. Okay, so first nga inyohang remember while conducting this psychological research is an operational definition. So some of the operational definitions. So this is a definition that specifies the operations used to produce or measure something, ordinarily a way to give it in a numerical value. So when you will be conducting research, you must have an operational definition of your specifically with your variables. So for example, if your study is or tackles like emotional intelligence and job performance. Okay, so um if someone would ask you unsa man ang kanang kuan unsa man ang job performance, unsa may pasabot ana. So when you will be asked that, ay by what job performance is, no, ang imong itubagan na if for operational definition, you will define job performance as like something appeal sa definition ang something that have a measure to it. So how will you be able to measure the job performance? So you will say that the job performance is the average or the mean scores of that particular employee as evaluated by their supervisor ing ana. So dapat you need to really be specific when giving an operational definition of your variables. Okay. So next, population samples. So population samples. So there are three types of population samples. So mabasa ninyo sa inyong screens, no? So first is convenience sample. So this is a group kaniha population sample. So these are your respondents, no, of your research. Okay. So when you will be using convenience sample, so a group chosen because of its ease of study. Well, I suggest if you will be conducting research na here in UB, particularly, no, we disregard this type of sampling, no, kaning convenience sampling kay mura nana magupoy gihapoy bias. For example, kay kung unsa ra may convenient ninyo, like for example, if your research tackles on UB students ang imuhang respondents, tapos ang imong mga friends na lang imong tagaan sa imong questionnaire, no, kay sila ra man po imong mga maduol, dili na yung ana, dili na siya it would not represent the entire population, the university population, if you will be conducting that study. Ang ideal magud ana is that for example, if your respondents are UB students, then you need to have a representative or like a group of people like from the College of Arts and Sciences, from College of Nursing, from College of Business Accountancy, Engineering, and ana. So there must be like a representative from each department to really attest nga um that your study is a university wide. Okay? So dili lang kay kung convenience sampling manggod. Okay, kung kinsa lang ang imong mga kaila or ani na lang mga CAS students na lang ako ang ipang tagaan ani akong questionnaire. So murag I don't know, like bias siya kaayo, and it would not represent the entire population. Okay? And then representative sample. So one that resembles the population in its percentage. So percentage from like like for example like a 10% from females, 10% some male, 10% sa part of this like LGBT community in ana. So like a certain percentage from this culture in ana ang representative sampling. Okay? And then for random sample, so this is the for me, this is the best one, no? One in which every individual in the population has an equal chance of being selected. So um my previous example, like one representative from each department of the university. So that's a random sampling. And then, please take note, dili po na, like, kanang kuha na siya ha, ako magpili kung kisa estudyante. Like, random ra siya, like, kana siya kana nga student number, ang kuhaon nako, no? With that specific department without knowing, wala ko kabalog kinsa nga student. Okay? Okay, so there are also a lot of and yeah, rather numerous research designs. So how you be able to conduct your study. Okay, so magdepende ni siya of what kind of research will you be doing. Okay, so first, naturalistic observation. So an examination of what happens under more or less natural conditions. So you will just be observing your respondents on their natural behaviors or natural setup or environment. So again, if for example, if your respondents of your study are University of Bohol college students, then y- you will be observing them or you will be observing their behavior inside the premises of the university because ing anak kana man ang imuhang focus sa imong study. And then case history is a thorough description of someone, including abilities and disabilities, medical conditions, life history, unusual experiences, and whatever else seems relevant. So in case history, it is a naturalistic observation, but the difference here is that we distinguish it because it focuses only on a single individual. Kay most of the time when you will be conducting case history, tinag-as ni siya og kanang time while conducting this research, no, okay, you will be focusing this single individual, no, like for example you will be um studying their medical conditions, no, so you need to set like a certain span of time to really observe their behaviors, their medical conditions, no, what they're doing, and then you also have to observe them on their natural environment. And then a survey studies the prevalence of certain beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors based on people's responses to questions. So mostly in survey studies, you will be giving out like questionnaires, no, or you will be having interviews to your respondents. And then correlational study is a measure of the relationship between two variables. So a variable is anything measurable that differs among individuals, such as age, years of education, or reading speed. So in correlational studies, we'll look into two variables. So we have to study with that. So you have to, like for example, you are curious if the height, for example lang niya, you want to discover if the height and intelligence is correlated. Tanaw nimo kung naba ni sila relationship. Kay butang na to if mas taas ba ang tao, unsa ba ni siya? Mas mo bright ba o mas mataas ang tao? Nga ana. So these composed of two variables that you want to test. If these two variables correlates or have a relationship with each other. Okay. And then for experimental design, no, the investigator manipulates at least one variable while measuring at least one other variable. Okay, so mostly in experimental design, kuan ni siya, controlled environment is siya. Dili ni siya makonduct sa natural environment but most probably like in laboratories, no? So strict kaayo nga dapat ing ani kahit like temperature lang ha, kahit temperature, ang lighting, you really have to control it as the researcher of the study to really know nga um to really test with your research if that particular variable that you want to test does really affect the variable that you're also testing. Okay, so that's for experimental design. Okay, so what is the dependent variable? So dependent variable is the items that an experimenter measures to determine the outcome. I believe that you're already familiar with this one because no, you also have your research, I guess, from your senior high senior high years, no? Independent variable, experimental group, and then for the control group, it is a set of individuals treated in the same way as the experimental group, except for the procedure that the experiment is designed to test. And then random assignment. So random assignment of participants to groups. So the experimenter uses a chance procedure, such as drawing names out of a hat to ensure that all participants have the same probability of being assigned to a given group. So this is applicable to random sampling. No, mo ni ang example. So random sampling, so having a chance in every group of the population, no, to be able to participate on your study. And how you will be able to do that? Through random assignment. So what is experimenter bias? So dili mo dyan nakalikaya, no? We're just human beings. So there are times when we are conducting our research, no? Especially if like somewhat personal ang ato ang research, you like you be somewhat affected, no, by the results or whatever. So there are some tendencies of an observer or like the researcher, even though that it is unintentional, to misperceive the results. So that's why they are using these mga techniques such as single blind, no, single blind and double blind to at least minimize these experimenter bias. Kay as much as possible, our results should be valid. So dili kay atuan na siyang gipang doktor-doktoran, dili na siya pwede, no. So if possible, we need to prevent this experimenter bias. So unsa man yung single blind? So single blind, the experimenter or the researcher, that's the one who is organizing the study, is aware of the purpose of the study. The observer is unaware, but the participants are aware. And then there's also um another single blind here, that is the experimenter who organizes the study is aware, and then the observer is also aware, but the participants are unaware of what would be or what will be happening of the study. And then for double blind, the experimenter who organized the study is aware, the observer and participants are both unaware. Okay, this is very important. So ethical considerations in research. So hopefully, Ponpon, if you also be conducting your thesis, no, here in UB, because of course that's a requirement, no, before you will graduate. So we have an ethics committee here in the University of Bohol. They are part also in the university research center. So all research all researches being conducted here in the university will all go through sa ethics committee. So they will review all our research if um nabatay wala na follow, no, nga mga protocols or policies or guidelines that could harm our research, or that could harm our participants in the research. So we need to follow these procedures, these protocols, no, to avoid these problems here in ethical considerations. So when we will be conducting research that deals with humans, so before conducting any study on people, us researchers will ask for their informed consent. So, unsa man yung informed consent? This is a statement that they have been told what to expect and that they agree to continue. Again, participants are told they have the right to quit if they find the procedures too disagreeable. So, even though at at the middle while doing the research or the no kanang ang experiment, the the participants or the respondents have the right to quit. So dili nimo siya mapugos no nga kanang dapat humanon jud nila ang research no, dapat humanon nila ang ilang participation. No. Unethical on our part no nga ang ato ang pugso ng atong participants. So that's why there's an informed consent that they need to sign nga they have the right to quit if they find it the procedure ngo nga kanang kuan ba sila uncomfortable ba no or sa ba dili na nila bet di jud nimo sila mapugos. Okay, so that's for informed consent. And then, if your research will also focus on children, samot na if minor, so below 18 years old, or those people with mental retardation, or those people that cannot understand the instructions well enough to provide informed consent. So bisan pag tagana imong papel na dili nakasabot sa imong gipangsulat sa imong informed consent, in such cases, the researchers will consult the person's guardian or nearest relative or simply decide not to proceed. No? So dili pwede nga as researchers ay dili ni bitaw ni kasabot sige papilo na lang ni nato or okay ra lagi ni no no. Even though that they cannot understand your informed consent or wala na sila yung mga alams no, you need to explain it to them, or if they cannot understand it, you need to explain it to their parents no. If si parents or any relatives dili kasabot ana, or if dili po sila mosugot, then you cannot proceed no with your research nga having these people participate on your study. And if your research will conduct on schools or universities, you must follow strictly the assigned policies and guidelines implemented by the institution. So here in the University of Bohol, of course, we also have our own protocols that you need to follow while conducting the research. Please take note that pohon-pohon no nga if you will have your orals, or proposals, um, dili na siya pwede nga magdiretso na maghatag sa inyong questionnaires with your respondents. No, you need to have at least, you need to have your proper procedures with that. You need to ask permission first from your dean, and then you need to have an approval it from the vice president for academic affairs. If mo tackle pa jud ni siya from the employees of the University of Bohol, then you need to ask permission from the vice president for administration and also from the president. So depende na siya kung sa nga type of research, as long as you need to know the policies and guidelines being implemented by the institution that you will be conducting your research. And then the committee also judges procedures in which investigators want to deceive participants temporarily. So there are times nung atong sa research, we're not allowed as researchers, we're not allowed to really tell 100% of what our research is all about. Okay, it might cause our research nga or our respondents nga marag basing malahin ng ilahang ipang answer sa ilang questionnaire kay they have already the idea of what the research is all about. So para dili siya ma-distorted ang atong research, there are some info that we cannot tell with our respondents. There are times nga dili po nato siya mabutang sa informed consent. And before we can do that, we need to ask permission first from the committee, or from here in UB, we need to ask first or consult it first from the ethics committee. If we are allowed to do it, or asa ra ta kutob pwede ang iingon or dili iingon sa ato ang respondents. Okay? And lastly, the American Psychological Association, or APA, is a published published a book discussing the proper ethical treatment of volunteers in experiments. So you can just look for it. No, I think it's majority of it is applicable no sa atua on what mga ethical considerations, policies, and guidelines set by the APA. And when you will be conducting your research for non-humans or mga animals, no, the professional organizations such as the Society of Neuroscience and the American Psychological Association published guidelines for properly using animals in research. So colleges and other research institutions maintain laboratory animal care committees to ensure that laboratory animals are treated humanly so that their pain no there are times manggod nga if you'll be conducting experiments to the animals masakitan sila so um as much as possible the pain and this and the discomfort that is feeling by the animal are kept to a minimum level and that experimenters consider alternatives before imposing potentially painful procedures, okay. But in our case um mo focus man ta no majority sa atong research sa humans. So um you need to study more about the mga ethical considerations in research while or concerning with humans, okay. So I guess that ends my presentation for this particular introduction in psychology. I will also be providing you some additional concept notes for you to read and also have your own readings as well. Ang mga different topics that I've mentioned here in my presentation, you can have your additional readings. You can like if there are some portions in my presentation nga wala kayo nimo nasabtan you can do research on it no to really fully grasp onto it. Okay, I believe you're already college students here so you can have your own research, your own learning. Okay, lahi-lahi man tag mga learning styles here. So work on what best suits you. So um I suggest to really broaden your readings, no? Kaya again, mo lagi ni, if namoy mga portion nga gusto pa ninyong um, mahibalaan or wala ninyong nasabtan, then you can have your own research. We're very lucky at this age that we have internet. So I don't think nga napatay excuse nga dili mo basa. Okay? And with regards with my reference no daghan man gud siya references so I suggest also to read no more references. You can just search online mga PDF introduction to psychology books. So there are a lot if you just have to research on it. And also if you have the opportunity or the chance to visit the university main library, then you can also borrow mga introduction to psychology books. I believe naapod ta dito. Okay? So don't worry, I will be posting some concept notes, but again, concept notes raman siya. So it's not like the detailed presentation or the detailed mga explanation of this kay taas pa man dun siya kaayo. So you need to have your own readings because dili raman po na sa for the sake nga you'll have a perfect score on our exam, but rather it's for you to learn more on our subject, especially nga this is an introduction to psychology. So in our subject, murag kuan na ni siya kaayo ba kanang gipang mugbo ra nga mga version kay supposedly in every topic pura man ni siya usa ka subject kan good. So pinaspasay ra ni siya nga style. So on your end, if you have time, read more, no, read more, Jud, read more, and then have other resources aside sa ako ang presentation, no, for you to extend more learnings and um also have more references with regards to our topics. Okay, so if you have questions or clarifications regarding on my presentation, then don't hesitate to message me on Facebook Messenger, or you can comment also your questions, or if you have something to share or you have something to say sa tong klase, no, or your learning sa tong klase, then it's greatly appreciated if you're able to do that in our Google Classroom. Okay. So I hope that you were able to learn something in this discussion video, and hope to see you all real soon face to face. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day ahead.